Alright, here's a preliminary look with the front cover off. And it looks like the bearings, races are pretty clean. It looks like brand new. No bits and pieces anywhere. Nothing looks like it's broke. And I even filtered the fluid that came out of it, and there are no pieces. Now, this thing is a little loose. I don't know if that means anything. The counter shaft bearing doesn't seem to be as loose. This one is really loose, so it appears that this bearing may be a problem. So let's put the front cover back on and flip this transmission on its front and start taking it apart. Alright, rear cover is now off. This is what it looks like inside. So just kind of get a little idea of what it looks like for my records too, so I know how to put it back together. That's the back of the transmission. Alright, let's start taking some of this parts apart. Okay, so far I have everything off to the reverse gear. Now in the instructions, it doesn't say anything about this lever here that the shifter goes into to help change the position of the shifts. This is in the way, so I got to take this off first before I can get the reverse gear off. And that is just held on by a pin right in here, so I just have to punch out the pin and get that out of the way, and then the reverse gear should slide up. Now also a note on my transmission, I have just a plastic gear for the reverse, so that just slid off. It was just held on by clips. But also to note is that this gear, even though it slips on, you see there's a little groove in there, and there's a little ball bearing that fit in there on my particular application. This is the ball bearing. There actually were two of them, and the ball bearings fit into these two little holes here that hold the speedometer gear, and then it held another, I think it was this thing here, it held in place as well. So that's different on mine. It's not in the instructions. So Next is to remove that linkage. And also a note, I didn't know this, and it's odd, the instructions say that these snap rings, I forget what they call them, snap rings. They're not snap rings. They're just like C-clips. And you need a special tool to get these. And the tool is called a circlip pliers. And I was wondering where people were getting these from, because I saw them in the videos. But I was trying to get those clips off with a snap ring pliers, and I got one off. It took me about 20 minutes to do it, but using these just pops right off. So makes it a lot easier when you have the right tools. So next I'm going to remove this shifter linkage, and we'll start removing some more parts. Alright, so get the reverse gear, just comes off. Set it aside. Rollers. What's next? Alright, now. Alright, let's see what we got here in the instructions. Okay. So next, you notice on my transmission, after you remove that bearing for reverse gear, there's supposed to be a wave washer. Well, on mine, there's no wave washer. And of course, if you, I don't know if you can see, look in the instructions. Right there's a wave washer, and then we got the reverse gear blocker ring. So that is this here. All this comes up. Stay together. That next. Alright, next looks like we gotta take the fork off with reverse gear. Alright, next it says to remove the snap ring. My goodness. Okay. Alright, so now we move the whole fork and synchronizer all in one shot. Okay. We got a spacer here. Alright, so I got, I guess the 5th, 6th gear, drive gear out. note is the drive gears was being held with this. So this went there like that. So it doesn't show that in the instructions for some reason. I was getting nowhere, and then I saw this separate. So once I pulled that out and used my gear puller, my homemade gear puller, that's this thing here. It's just a Harbor Freight 3-jaw gear puller. A 2-jaw one would probably be better, but I took 3/4 inch by 3/16 inch thick steel plates, and I cut them 11 inches long, and then the bolts are 9 inches on center. And I just added those extensions, and I was able to get down there, and it pulled right off, no problem. I just used a air ratchet. Just use this, pulled right off. I know some people in the YouTube have been having a hard time pulling that off, and at first I was, but there was that clip there. As soon as I removed the clip, it came right off. But the instructions show this and another gear all part of it, but according to this there, it's 2 separate pieces, and I got to get the fork out before I can get that out. So this seems different than in the instructions. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so now I have removed the snap ring right down in there for this shifting fork here. So that's the snap ring right there. So next I'm going to try to remove this gear cluster and fork. Okay, in a lot of the videos I've seen on YouTube, this whole cluster, once the snap ring is removed, pops out. Well, that was an old design. This is a new design, much stronger, and this is pretty solid. It's all pressed on one counter shaft now. So now I removed the C-clip. This is pressed on, so I'll get my gear puller, pull this off. And then there's another clip down here. This will just slide right off, and then I'll find out what happens down here. So let me set this up. Alright, here's a way I figured out on keeping this Harbor Freight 3-jaw gear puller from slipping off. Every time I would add force, they would just pop off. So I have this big hose clamp here. The whole thing's down. I also tighten these bolts real tight so it keeps things more stiff, and then I just gradually use the impact wrench to work it off, and just kept an eye on things, making sure these claws were all the way underneath and not on the teeth at all, and it slowly started working up, and so now it is loose and ready to remove. So we'll work on to the next step. Okay, so the next step is to remove 6th gear and its synchronizer complex. Now, as you can see, there's not enough room back here to even get a jaw from these pullers. So what I did was I put a jaw here, and I put a jaw over here, and then the other jaw just left hanging on the side. And as I held the jaw over here on the side, I kept it level. Otherwise it would kind of keep pulling to the side. And this was not on real tight. It was on snug, but not real tight. So I didn't even have to use an impact driver to get it off. I just actually used a socket and a ratchet wrench to work it loose, and it came right loose. So that's how I got 6th gear out. So it's free. So let me remove that and we'll continue. Okay, so 6th gear is removed. So according to the new manual on this updated version of the transmission, the main case is now ready to be removed. The only thing I need to do is I'll have to unscrew the alignment pins for the shifter rails. There's 2, one on each side here on the top of the transmission, and then I'll have to take out a pin that's holding this, and then as I lift this up I have to hold on to this as it slides off the rail, and then make sure I don't lose any small parts as I do that. But that's all there is to it. In the old design, this was 2 pieces, so this was a separate piece, but now the counter shaft is one long shaft in one piece. So that makes it much stronger and eliminates a weakness that they say was inherited with these transmissions. So let's pull this cover main case off and we'll go from there. Okay, main case is off. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Let's just take a closer look here so we get an idea of how things are sitting. Especially with the forks. Alright, so we'll check the manual and see what should be removed first. And then see if we can't figure out what is causing this to stay locked in 4th gear. Alright, the instructions say remove 5th and 6th gear rails. So that's these here. Okay, so here is the mechanism that selects the gears. So this is, I think, 3rd, 4th, and this little lever is 2nd, 3rd, or no, 1st and 2nd. Then we got 5th and 6th. I could have these all wrong, but that's how they're, what they do. So we need to get this one out. So right now we're in neutral. So this is the guide. So this is where one of the guide bolts went into to keep that at this level here. And then this is your shifter. Boy, if it just moves out of line a little bit, the pin there, that's what's your shifter. That's what engages these little fingers. Get it in there, so that's neutral. So you move over a little bit. That's this here, 1st and 2nd. So we got 1st, 2nd, we got 3rd, and then that's 4th. So this little lever moves the fork for first and second. So if you move it into the next spot, we got third and fourth. Then over. Next we'll engage fifth and sixth. And then the other one is reverse all the way over. So in order to get this cluster out of here, we've got to just move this all the way out. And that should free everything up. And that just comes right out. And that's how we remove that. Alright, let's see what's next. Okay, the instructions say next is to remove the countershaft cluster of gears. So this ought to be fun. To lift up on this a little bit and tip it out, and there's your counter shaft. Alright, next we're supposed to remove the main shaft with the cluster of gears and forks. Of course. Alright, so the input shaft is coming with it too. Alright, well, there it is. So we'll put this up on the tray. Alright, I found the problem. So while this is all bent up, some of it is bent up because I tried to pull it off while it was in the transmission. But the main problem is when you pull the main shaft out, it should just separate easily from the input shaft, and the input shaft will be still staying in the front plate. Well, when I pulled everything out, the input shaft came with it, and I had to kind of wiggle this off, and look at this bearing. This bearing is toast, it is fused. That's why this was not rotating freely when in neutral with respect to the main shaft. It was just locked tight in here, so fourth gear was engaged all the time. Boy, that sucker it's not even moving. Let's see, I don't even see the race. Is the race in there? I guess. But, well, that's the problem. Look at the cage there. Oh, I think this is the race. Yeah, this is the race. Here, it's just stuck on the cage. The cage is all chewed up. So apparently when I was running this at 4,000 RPMs, something just failed. This is the noise it must have heard. And it just fused. And everything locked up. So that's that, but everything else looks nice and clean. There are no parts or broken pieces in the main case. So now I gotta get that bearing off and put a new one in. Thankfully I ordered one of these and one of these. So stay tuned for the next episode. Alright, Here's what's left of the bearing. This is actually the race that presses to the inside of the input shaft. I mean, all of these rollers are just fused. It's just, something must have really heated this up. I don't get why I can't even get it all out. And at first I thought that this was the main shaft here and it's damaged, but that's actually the inner race of the bearing, and that will slide off. So thankfully the main shaft was not damaged. So I'll have to get a gear puller to get that off. That ought to be fun. But there isn't a round piece roller bearing in this whole thing anymore. Wow, that's what I call self-destructing of a bearing. Alright. Well, I have to work something out to get this inner race of the old bearing off and put the new one on. Alright, stay tuned. That might be a while.